So like I said, it's been a pretty hectic week. This morning was hectic especially, let me tell you. So I was trying to print these notes, right? And my laptop, when I plugged it in the printer, it just completely crashed. Like the thing, I don't even think my laptop works anymore, okay? So I go and get my dad's laptop. It's so old and it doesn't work very well at all. But I plugged that thing into the printer because, you know, my laptop obviously is not working. So I guess mine really is the one that's not any good. But so I plug it into the printer, right? And I'm like, yes, it's finally working. I got it to hook up. And then it starts printing. And the papers are coming through, right? And then I look and I realize that there are no words on the paper. And in perfect fashion, of course, the printer's out of ink, right? So I had to come up here. Brother Alan tried to help me this morning. I tried to hook that laptop to the printer they got in the booth back there. But for whatever reason, my laptop, I guess it just didn't feel like picking up on that printer, so I couldn't get it printed there either. So then we went to Miss Nicole's office, hooked up the laptop, and after completely rewiring the whole laptop, we finally got these notes to print, which, I mean, it's all right. But it's been a crazy morning. There's been a lot of trial and tribulation leading up to this. But I feel that's when the best stuff happens, is when you go through all of that, God, because then you appreciate success so much more when you know what it's like to struggle. You know what I mean? All right. So, okay. So you're probably wondering, what's this up here in the background, right? That is an elephant's foot. All right? And the reason I have that up there, I'm going to tell you a little story. So there was this guy. He was a missionary. And he took a trip to Tanzania. And as he was walking through the, I don't know, what's it called, safari or something like that, he was walking down this road, and then there were just massive elephants just standing right beside the road. Didn't seem to be caged up or anything. And then he stumbled upon this man, and he said, why are these elephants just standing here in this one spot? They're not going anywhere. They have all of this room that they could roam and they could do whatever they want, but they're just standing here. And then he noticed that tied to each of the elephants' feet, there was a rope, a small little rope. And he asked the trainer, he said, they could easily break that, so why don't they just walk away? And the trainer said, well, we start conditioning them from a young age. We tie them to that rope, and when they're little, they're convinced that it's enough to keep them in place. They can't break that rope when they're young. So as they grow older and older, they're raised with the mindset that they can't break that bondage that they had when they were younger. And oftentimes I found that this same thing happens to us. We have a sense of expectation management, that we couldn't do it then, so we can't do it now. You get what I'm saying? Or what I'm doing now, I could never have done then. You know what I mean? And like I said, oftentimes this is the mindset we have. We're convinced that the things that have weighed us down for so long are too much to shed at this time, because we have the mindset that we couldn't do it then, so we can't do it now. We live in a defeated spirit of sorts. Like I said, we have a sense of expectation management, that I can't break this. I can't get away from this. I've never been able to get away from it, and I never will be able to get away from it. You get what I'm saying? We have developed a sense of false identity. That's not who we really are, but that's who we think we are. And to give you a little bit of analogy, so we know that in our world today, homosexuality, transgenderism, it's not a topic we're comfortable talking about. You know what I mean? But we love to condemn it based on the biblical premise that in Leviticus 18:22, it says that a man should not have sexual relations with a man as he does with a woman, because that is detestable in God's eyes. So we love to condemn sins of that nature because we have biblical context to back it up. We say, that right there, that's a sense of false identity. When you're filling out a questionnaire that says male, female, or other, and you check other, what is that? That's man-made false identity. Genetically speaking, you're either XX or you're XY. There's no in-between. The only in-between is something that we make up, a sense of false identity. There is no chromosome configuration that says, I'm somewhere in the middle. It doesn't work that way. But that's what we do. We develop senses of false identity. But as much as we love to condemn sins like that, we never talk about identities of anxiety, identity of fear, identity of depression. Does the Bible not say, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God? He said, don't be anxious about anything. So why are you being anxious? What does he say about fear? He says, for God gave us the spirit, not of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. What does he say about sadness? He says, let not your hearts be troubled, because joy comes in the morning. All too often, we love to condemn these other sins, but when it comes to something we struggle with personally, we don't like to say anything at all. And I don't mean this to be condemning. I'm just saying, you can argue, there are different degrees of sin. Maybe this is a little bit worse than the other. But at the end of the day, like gender, sin's a binary spectrum. 1 or 2, wrong or right. How wrong or how right? Does it really even matter? It doesn't. It doesn't matter at all. Because at the end of the day, it's either one or the other. We love to condemn until an issue we struggle with is considered unbiblical. Like I said, it's either one or the other. It's a binary spectrum. I can break my mom's favorite coffee mug, or I can smash her windshield. I'm getting beat either way. You know what I mean? She's not going to say, well, I mean, I love that coffee mug, but you didn't break my windshield, so I'll just spank you one time. She's going to say, boy, you better, I'm finna. Oh. Anyways. So to break up the tension a little bit, the aura of that is a result of uncomfortable situations, I thought I would tell you a bit of a story. It's about honey mustard. Honey mustard is my favorite dipping sauce. I'm just going to tell you straight up. Chicken nuggets, chicken tenders, I love honey mustard, right? So the year was 2010. I was like, I don't know, how old was I? Probably like 8 or 9 years old. That was when I transitioned from Happy Meal to 10-piece nugget. All right? And for those of you who eat chicken nuggets in here, you know that when you got like 10 plus nuggets, one sauce ain't cutting it. You get what I'm saying? So I sat there, and I was like, I thought to myself, that first 10-piece nugget, this lady really just gave me one sauce. Now, I can't hardly eat a Happy Meal with one sauce. How am I supposed to eat all this 10-piece? You know what I mean? And I sat there, and I was like, man, I really need some more sauce. But I was afraid. As a kid, man, I was so afraid to speak to anybody. I let my mom, my dad, anybody except for me, even Josh, would go up to the counter and ask for a honey mustard because I was too afraid. I couldn't ask anybody. And I sat there for years, probably until I was like 14 or maybe even 15. Like, it was a problem, a big, big problem. And then one day, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm finna go get this sauce because my parents are constantly dogging me, and they came to a point where they're like, you know what? I'm not getting your sauce. None of us are getting your sauce. You want extra sauce, you're going to get it yourself. I was like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah. I was like, really? And they were like, yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go get some honey mustard. So I walk up to the counter. I walk up here and I said, can I get an extra dipping sauce? And in that moment, you know what that cashier said to me? Extra sauces are 25 cents a piece. So I walked back to my mom and I said, Mom, I need a quarter. Got that quarter, you know what I'm saying? Went back up to that counter and I said, yeah, let me get that extra dipping sauce. Gave her the quarter. She slid me the honey mustard like a nice little transaction. I said, oh, yeah. And then I got that extra dipping sauce, and you might think it's funny. But in that moment, that was big for me. That was huge. I never could have done that before. Like, that just wasn't who I was. I convinced myself that, it's been this way since I was a little kid. I couldn't ask for dipping sauce then, so I can't ask for dipping sauce now. The thought of a 15-year-old kid not being able to ask for extra dipping sauce, that's laughable. I'll agree with you on that. You're not bullying me. I agree with you. But anyways, I was living under a spirit of fear. Like I said, walked up to that thing, got that extra dipping sauce. And in that moment, that was kind of a revolutionary time for me. I don't even know what happened. It was almost as if overnight, all of a sudden, my fear of public speaking just dissolved. Like, towards the beginning of my junior year, there was an election for, class president, student government and all that good stuff. And then I just thought, as I was sitting in the cafeteria, I was like, shoot, I'm finna just be student body president. So you know what I did? I walked up on that stage, and I gave a great speech, not to brag or anything, but it was an excellent speech. And in front of all these people, we got almost 300 people in my senior class. I was like, good, what in the heck am I doing? I got up there and I was like, no, this is insane. But I was already up there then. There was nothing I can do about it. And in that moment, I learned to put myself in uncomfortable situations, because that's when you learn the most, is when you're out of your comfort zone. And you know what? I was elected student body president. If you would have told my younger self that you got up and talked in front of 270 some odd people, I would never have believed you. I would have thrown up and been like, what day is that so I know to miss school? Just this past Friday, I spoke to probably, I don't know how many people are enrolled in our school, but it's over 1,000 people. And I got in the floor of our gym in front of all those people, high school kids, mind you, the most judgmental people you'll ever meet. Why do you think so many people struggle with self-image and they're not confident in who they are? Because they're constantly getting torn down at school. Imagine if I would have went out there and everybody would have laughed at me. That would have broken me bad. But you know what? They didn't. I went down on that floor and I gave a nice little pep speech. And, I've done that probably every single home football game. So like 8, 9, something like that, in front of over 1,000 people. And I don't even know how I do it. I don't do that. I could never speak in front of 1,100 kids, but my God can. I can never get down there and perform with eloquence, but my God can. I could have never got that extra dipping sauce, but my God did. You see, God made us in his image. I don't think God would be afraid to speak in front of 1,100 high school kids. I think God was probably brazen enough to ask for extra dipping sauce. You know what I mean? So I was like, well, dadgummit, if I'm supposed to be like him, might as well do it. Get what I'm saying? Yeah. And I'm not the only person that struggles with false identity. You know, people in the Bible, they struggle with false identity. They had identity crises too. But you see, God does not identify us with our lows. He identifies us with our highs. He identifies us as what he sees us to be, not what we make ourselves out to be. Take David, for example. What do you think when you think of David? Seriously, somebody say something. He's a giant slayer. People say, he's a giant slayer. Don't nobody ever say, he saw Bathsheba and he was like, I'm finna commit adultery and I'm gonna send you right to the front lines to be murdered. They don't say that. They identify David as a man after God's own heart. They identify him as a giant slayer. God does not look at us by our lows. He looks at us by our highs. Take Paul, for example. This man was present for the stoning of the first Christian martyr, Stephen. He would go door to door, imprisoning Christians, killing Christians. And then, he was just having him a day, got blinded for a minute. A guy named Ananias helped him out. And then all of a sudden, Paul became one of the most powerful people in the Bible. He wrote the entire book of Acts, for crying out loud. Take Peter. What do you think of? You think of Peter? You were supposed to walk on water. Dadgummit. Yeah, Peter, man. He was in the boat and he was like, I'll walk on the water, for crying out loud. Might as well. Somebody's got to do it. You identify Peter with walking on the water. And like Mom said, he did deny Christ 3 times. Even though he's like, no, bro, I'm not going to deny him. And you're probably going to deny him. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. But you know what God didn't do? He didn't say, well, Peter, you denied me. You're out of the disciples. Go write an album about it. Start your own band. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. In fact, Peter was the first of the 12 disciples that Jesus reappeared to after his resurrection. He didn't say to himself, oh, no, I think I'm going to probably leave Peter till last. Let him learn a bit of a lesson next time you backstab me. You know what I mean? God does not identify you with your shortcomings. He identifies you with who he sees you to be. But in order to achieve what you can achieve, in order to walk into your best calling, you got to be willing. You got to want what he has for you. You cannot identify with victory if you're living with a defeat mindset. You cannot identify with happiness if you're living with a spirit of depression. You cannot live in a peaceful mindset if all you think about is anxiety. You get what I'm saying? I say that a lot, don't I? Goodness. So for those of you who have never heard me speak before, this was probably forever ago when I said this. When I was probably around the age of 8 or so, to the time I was about 13 years old, man, I had such bad anxiety to the point that I would make myself sick just over going to school in the morning. For 5 whole years. I took 8 pills a day, 365 days a year for 5 straight years. That's almost 13,000 pills. And me. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? And then one day, I thought to myself, man, after countless doctor visits, and man, they drew blood probably every other day, and I'm like, geez, I don't even think I have blood left in me. And they was running these tests, and they was trying to figure out what the issue was. And they're like, we can't find anything. There's nothing wrong with you. And then they found out that my stomach was full of ulcers. And you know where those ulcers came from? They were a product of my anxiety, me stressing myself out to the point that I literally made myself sick. My mom's found me laying in the bathroom floor at 2 in the morning because that tile floor was the only thing cool enough to keep me from throwing up. Yeah. And then one day I said, I'm sick and tired of this, man. I'm tired of battling with this. I don't want to be sick anymore. I don't want to take these pills anymore. So you know what I did? I just stopped the medicine cold turkey. I stopped taking that junk. Mom didn't know. And then she saw one of my pill bottles and she was like, have you been taking your medicine? And I was like, oh yeah, about that. Nah. And then she said, well, I mean, you haven't been sick these past couple of weeks. Then I was like, well, you're right. I haven't. Because what I found out, that medication wasn't doing anything for me. The thing that I needed was to break away from that anxiety that oppressed me for so long. I had to break away from that. I had to get out of that mindset that I was constantly going to stress myself out over school. And once I broke that, God healed my stomach. That medicine did nothing to, I mean, if it would have worked, wouldn't it have done something after 5 years? It didn't. It did absolutely nothing. That right there was a big empowerer for me. I love it. I love it so much when people walk up to me at school and they're like, man, you do a great job speaking at the pep rallies. Man, I could never do that. And I just look at them and I'm like, yeah, you could. You could do it just as good, if not better than me. I'm not the one speaking at those pep rallies. I could never speak in front of that many people. My God does that. You can do anything you set your mind to. You just got to be willing. God did not make you. And he said, not everybody can have the spirit of public speaking. So I'm going to take that away from Christian. Not everybody can have the spirit of a sound mind. So I'm going to take that away from Philip. He doesn't just pluck details out of your life. If we're made in his image, I don't think he would take positive characteristics out of himself. You know what I mean? He didn't make us like that. He made us to be great. He made us to walk in our true identity. We're not having an identity crisis because when you learn to identify with God, you learn to identify with the Creator that put you in the position, the absolute best possible position to excel in your life. Oh, man. My hands are shaking, brother. So I guess to just sum this up, if any of you are struggling with a sense of false identity, something that does not resonate in your spirit, something that doesn't seem like a God-like characteristic. God doesn't give you anxiety. God does not give you depression. God does not give you addiction. So why are you living with it? You got to want it. Do you want it? Do you want to keep living that way? Do you want to keep being burdened? No? Then don't. It's that simple. You got to be willing to let God work in your life, and that's how you're going to break away from that. So that was kind of my spiel. So now Auburn is going to come up and she's going to share with you guys a vision she had recently. But I appreciate y'all's time.